Hello class, I'm going to talk about incident response. So the first thing we're going to talk about is cybersecurity paradox. So systems and networks were designed to be connected, and since no system is 100% secure and will never be 100% secure regardless of what kind of security measures you put in place, they'll always, and users will always be the weakest link. Okay. So since we constantly have new technology every day, then there's always some kind of new threat, um, and it can be uh, from hackers, um, insider threats like disgruntled employees, and so forth. Um, so incidents will occur, and organizations must respond to those incidents, part of a due diligence. So you have to always be on the, I won't say defensive, but similar. You have to try to prevent what you can prevent. And otherwise, if you have an incident to occur, then you're going to have to get out um, and handle that incident, get everything back to normal, try to find out what happened, and so forth. Okay, so we've got incident response. And the Computer Security Resource Center of NIST defines events and incidents in their special publication 861. So they define an event as any observable occurrence in a system or network. And then an incident is defined as a violation or threat of violation of computer security policies, acceptable use policies, or standard security practices. Okay, an incident also it is that violates your security policies or procedures that attempts to affect the CIA of that system, and so that's your confidentiality, integrity, or availability. Um, so each organization must then have its own policies, laws, um, rules, and so forth. Um, just guidelines on how to um, define a cyber incident. And they must also have plans. Okay. Okay, here we go. So why and how do a cyber incidents occur? So you can have classified information, people mishandling those. That can be an insider employee. It could be a contractor working with a government agency that mishandles it. Somebody can just send an email that has classified information in it, and then that's some kind of incident there. So that's negligence. Insider threats, for example, like Edward Snowden or Private Manning. So another area is just criminal activity, um, people stealing data and trade secrets. You could also have theft of funds, like Crime Inc. or ransomware, where they take over a computer system, and it happened in a hospital recently, take over their medical records, and then they ask them to pay a certain amount of money to get that data back. And they even have a help desk where they can help them send the money to them. So it's just a big organized crime. All right. Next is your denial of service. So that means that you're getting a lot of hits on a server. Essentially, it'll start bringing it down and won't let anybody else in. Okay, distributed denial of service. It's like the Iran attack on a U.S. bank, or um, it uses several different um, computer systems um, to bring down websites or servers or what have you. Another one is extortion, the Sony hack, and also ransomware is that as well. We'll talk about Sony hack in a few minutes. Hacktivism means that if you got a cause, you think your cause is good, like Anonymous, they will hack people just to make their cause known. Hacking for Thrill, Script Kiddies, and Lucifer. Well, just because I can do it, does that mean I need to do it? Script kiddies are also people that really don't know how to hack or the code. They can still um, code off the dark web and modify it somewhat for them and pay for it and then just run with it. And nation states like China or Russia hacking into the US or other countries, or even government government contractors to steal their intellectual property. Okay. Now, here's the Sony hack case. This gives you a little information on it. So on the 24th of November, a cyber attack was launched on Sony, and the employees on the network were met with the sound of gunfire, scrolling threats, and menacing image of a fiery skeleton looming over a tiny zombie heads of the studio of the top two executives. So before the IT staff could pull the plug or take down the network, the hackers' malware had leaked from machine to machine, wiping out almost half of their global network. It erased everything stored on over 3,000 of their 67, almost 7,000 personal computers, and half of their servers, 837 of 1555. The attackers added this algorithm that overwrote the data 7 different ways, and then the code zapped each computer startup software, and so rendering the machines brain dead. So by destroying the company's data, the hackers had stolen it. Over the next 3 weeks, they dumped 9 batches of confidential files onto a public file sharing site that included unfinished movie scripts, emails, and salary lists of more than 47,000 social security numbers. 5 of the Sony films, 4 of them were unreleased, were leaked to the piracy websites for free viewing. And FBI blamed North Korea over threats of a film that was going to put their leader in a negative scenario that they didn't really care for. So the FBI stated that the malware that they used was undetectable by industry standard antivirus software. So sounds like a 0 day to me. So experts say that the Sony's electronic security probably wasn't worse than that of many others, but it's clear that they failed to employ several basic safeguards, and they didn't put up much of a fight. So if you do a little research, you'll find out that they didn't really have a lot of security practices in place. Don't believe they updated their security patches, and so and I don't believe they even had a security plan. I believe it was one of the FBI's said that they walked into Sony after this happened, and they just walked right through the building on the way to the IT department. They saw the server room door. It was not cipher locked or anything. They just walked right on in. So a lot of these things you've got to uh, take into consideration on what you need to do as far as physical security as well. Okay, so for prevention, most incidents can or could have been prevented. Human error is likely the cause of many security failures. And then a new study found that only 1 in 10 consumers had any classes or training about protection of their computers or their personal information during the last 12 months. So um, they also say that cybersecurity experts have lapses in judgment or security practices. Companies may not want to invest the necessary time or money to provide adequate defense. So it costs. And it costs them dearly not to have that. So, they have to weigh the risk. And worse, that they may not know what they need to defend. So they need to categorize their data. And this little term or phrase here, know your enemy and know yourself. So you got to think like the bad guys. So if you think like them, then you may know how to defend yourself and what to do to prevent some of the incidents from occurring. Okay. So what we will need to have is an incident response policy that guides a team, our team, on what actions they should take during certain incidents. The policy should place a higher priority on incidents that pose the greatest risk, and then the response should correspond to the priority of the incident and risk to the organization. So when defining risk, you need to take on asset valuation, you need to take the, I have a misspelled word here, total cost actually of an asset to include the purchase price, the development and maintenance cost, advertising, cost for support, repair, and replacement, as well as costs due to loss of reputation and so forth. A threat is a person or thing that is likely to cause the damage or some kind of danger. And a vulnerability is what's open to attack, harm, or damage. Is there something there that is vulnerable? Can you patch it? What can you do to alleviate it? And then the risk is the possibility that a threat will exploit that vulnerability. Next, we have calculating the loss. So you'll have a formula here, which is the exposure factor. That is like the percentage of a loss of an asset if the risk actually happens. And so it's from 0 to 1. Single loss expectancy is the cost of a single risk against an asset expressed in dollars. Okay. So the ARO, which is the annualized rate of occurrence, is the frequency of occurrence. Like if it happened once a year or twice a year, and you can go back and look at historical records and find out how often are we hit by a certain occurrence or risk or incident. Something like maybe if we are on the coast, maybe a hurricane, how often do we have a hurricane? And so then if you have a hurricane twice a year, then you might put 2 times a year, okay? So that's what your ARO is. So the annualized loss expectancy is is your single loss expectancy, SLE, times the rate of occurrence, the annual rate of occurrence. So let's say my machine or my data or my data center is $75,000, and I'm expected to have a hurricane or something in this area on an average of twice a year. So I put 2, and so that is $150,000, which is 75,000 times 001 equals $75. That is the annualized rate of occurrence. For incident response policy. Okay, so for an incident response policy is a policy that helps you govern your incident response teams. It gives guidance, and it's individualized per organizations. But most of them will have the same key elements, so we'll look at those. You'll have a statement of management commitment, so they have to sign off on the policy. Purpose and objectives of the policy. You'll have a scope, which is, who does it apply to and under what circumstances, and the definition of computer security incidents related terms. So you'll have definitions for certain terms. People that do not speak in IT terms or computer related terms, then you might have to put them in layman's terms or the business side. So you'll have to distinguish how you define those particular terms. Okay, so the org structure and definitions of roles, responsibilities, and levels of authority, and the authority of the incident response team, and when do you escalate, and guidance for external communications. Those things are going to be in this policy. You're also going to have to take different incidents and give them a prioritization or severity ratings. Okay, and we'll have some kind of, how are you going to measure if you're doing well? So you're going to have some kind of performance measures. And also you'll have reporting and contact forms. So who do I report it to? What kind of form do I need to fill out? And who needs to have that, and so forth. So in this next slide, you'll have some more elements. You'll have, what is your mission statement, strategies and goals. Like, so you need that senior management approval. You'll have to have an organizational approach to the incident response. How will that team communicate to the rest of the organization and to others? You'll also have metrics for measuring the capabilities and effectiveness of the plan. You also will have a roadmap to maturing the incident response capability. So if, let's say I have something to take out my data center, then you'll also need to know lessons learned. So from one incident to another. And so when you learn different lessons from different incidences, then you'll have to go back and update that incident response policy that covers some stuff that you may have left out before. Okay, and also how the program fits into the overall organization. You might want to include a media policy to discuss how you talk to the media for your company. So organizations find it beneficial to have one single point of contact that actually talks to the media. This can help alleviate some of that loss of reputation, if you have a good one. Then, communicating to law enforcement, you should be contacted through designated individuals in a manner consistent with the requirements of the law and the organization's procedures. Many organizations prefer to appoint one team member or IR team member, and when I say IR, I'm talking about incident response, as the primary point of contact with law enforcement. And that person should be familiar with the reporting procedures for all the law enforcement agencies and prepared to recommend which agency should be contacted. Okay. And now we're going to talk about types of incident response teams. You're going to have a central, it's called a CIRT, Central Incident Response Team. So you have a single IR team that handles incidents throughout the organization, and they are most effective for small organizations, those with minimal geographic diversity. So it's just one team that handles everything. Okay, a distributed one is an organization that has multiple teams for different areas of the organization and or location. So they're still a part of that single coordinated entity, so the IR process is consistent. And then you have coordinating teams. They provide advice to the other teams without having the authority over them, but they just have, you could go to them for advice. Okay, and it says the example is the CSIRT. Okay, what makes up the team? So the IR teams can consist of employees. You can have outsourced people, or partially outsourced, or fully outsourced. Okay. Okay, the IR manager role is a person that has one or more designated alternate who is in charge of the overall incident response. They oversee and evaluate the response. They are technically adapted and a very good has very good communication skills. They also perform other tasks like a liaison between uh, the upper management and the rest of the team, or even the IT area. Ultimately, they are responsible for the overall IR plan. Now, ours, when I was at Robins Air Force Base, ours was usually the senior cybersecurity manager, or the IAM, was responsible for the IR plan for a system, so each system. And then you would have one that had a security manager over the whole organization. So you'll have an IR team lead and a team. The team lead is a technical lead who assumes oversight and responsibility of the team's technical work. So they should not be confused with incident lead. Incident lead can be somebody that's not technical. So you'll have some kind of interdependency. So management, information assurance, IT support, legal department, every one of these will have a play in your building your IR plan, and also as for in the incident response process. And some other interdependencies will be public affairs, media relations, how to talk to the media, human resources, business continuity planning. This incident response plan can be part of that business continuity planning. Overall, it's part of your big cybersecurity plan. Okay, physical security and also facilities management. All of these people have a play in also helping you build the incident response plan. Okay, so incident handling, your life cycle is you got to identify the incident, analyze what it's done. You got to gather the evidence, whether it's network packet capture files or whatnot. You gather evidence. Um, you can contain it. You also mitigate the issues. Uh, and we're talking about, all right, do I disconnect everything from the network, shut it down? Uh, how do we get rid of it? How do we eradicate it, in other words? And then, how do we bring everything back up? So this is your life cycle. The last thing they've got is refine the policy. Like I said, every incident you're going to learn something new, and you'll have to keep updating that policy. Okay, when does the incident response begin? Um, you can go to this link and look at the cyber kill chain. You may have seen the Lockheed Martin kill chain before, but it identifies detection, deny, disrupt, degrade, deceive, destroy, or mitigate. And the earlier that an incident is detected, the easier it is to contain or eradicate it. Okay, React is actually another framework, so it's response to the incident. Then you evaluate when the incident is over, what major assets are involved, what kind of damage. Is it a continued operation possible? And then you reevaluate uh, any and all changes, it should be changes, to your site's configuration. So you try to rule out um, any of your bad configuration and bad assumptions. Um, so this is part of the evaluation, and your of course your operator error. And now we'll get to forensics. And the reason I wanted to do incident response first is because it's part of forensics. Um, but it has to, it's part of the forensics process. So you have to respond to some kind of incident in the data forensics. Okay, so your forensics in support of the incident response is going to help you identify the extent of the incident, identify a timeline, and also where did it come from. You might see a source, or you'll see a target. The timeline is going to give you dates. You can also look at an IP and find out its geolocation. So those are kind of things that forensics can help you with. You can identify actions taken by the malware or malicious users. It can help you with damage assessment and help tell the story of in those basic 5 W's. Why, what, why, where, when, who, and how.